We are the A team. I'm Asterisk.
And this is Ashley, and these are quick chats about how to navigate enterprise product design. Cool.
All right. Hello. How are y'all doing? I am Asterisk Loftus, and this is.
Ashley Frazier.
I did the point. Okay. And we are two highly seasoned product designers, enterprise product designers. And we just decided to make a nice little channel for you all to talk about the realities of enterprise product design, what it's about, and how you might, hopefully you can walk away with some very strategic and tactical things that you can apply to your projects. Again, my name is Asher Loftus, Salesforce MVP. Been designing for about, 15, 17 years. Oh, I'm getting old. I'm getting up there. Specializing in Salesforce the last, I'd say, 8 or so years. Actually, my friend Ashley she put me onto that a long time ago, and I haven't looked back since. Let's tell you about yourself a little bit more, Ashley.
Thanks, Asterisk. Kind of in the same boat. I've been designing in some capacity for over 15 years. I remember when I originally got into this world, we'll say, I had dreams of just doing graphic design. And then one of my first internships was to learn how to do HTML, CSS. So that was kind of a shock, but I'm really glad I had to do that. So then I got into web development, helping creating CMSs, content management systems. I was doing a lot of marketing websites, e-commerce websites. And then I had a former front-end developer and friend bring me into enterprise world. And that's where I was introduced to Salesforce, other enterprise products, and just been doing that for 8, 9 years, maybe 10, a
Yeah,
long time.
a
So
long time. We're still young. We're still young.
that's how I met you, Asterisk. And we just always had a great relationship and kind of love chatting about design, but more of strategy. How can we be more tactical? And so as we talked about this, I was like, let's just talk about it with people and
This
just
is
see.
true. This is true. I
Yeah.
think a lot of this are these are the golden nuggets, the little pieces that you only really get through experience. You can't really fake this stuff. Like it's all the pieces and parts that make a great project that aren't really just academia. They're not just we're not, a lot of times I think people like to focus on visual design when they think design, but there's so much more to user experience design. That's just a blip in it. So these are the conversations that you can apply, conversations that are going to talk about the nitty gritty from real life people that, we got families, we got kids, we're juggling life, try not to eat too much sugar. We're trying to live life and be the best that we can. And we're giving you real strategies, real decisions, real conversations around that. Okay. Now today, I think for our first episode, our first topic, we want to talk about something that is near and dear to our hearts, something very important, and something we need to explain to people when they're thinking about getting into, I'd say UX design in general, because it's such a big field, which includes enterprise product design. UX design is everything, right? But
Mhm.
if you're doing enterprise product design, I think, and we can agree with this, that your biggest superpower isn't pushing the pixels. It's not visual design at all. We're not. It's building relationships. It's figuring out what's going on your project. So that's what we want to talk about today. That's kind of the overall topic here. Um, and to that point, I think one of the first parts that I really think is important before, when you get into a project and when you start something up, it's really understanding what is the structure, who are the players that are going to be in this field. So what is the organizational structure look like? And I have a couple of tactics and way of looking at that. But when you come on a project, actually, kind of, how do you like to go about doing this?
Mhm. Yeah, so, coming from the consulting world, I think it's given us a lot of great experience as kind of peering into the world of enterprise companies. And they're all very unique and different, but I think what they have in common is organization charts. right? So every time you get on a project, I think it's very important to understand like who are the big stakeholders, right? So who at the end of the day are we having to kind of sell to or get on the bandwagon, kind of understand what we're trying to do, but we're also understanding what's the business needs at the end of the day, right? So
Exactly. Exactly.
understanding that top level, and then how does it trickle down? So, usually there's that higher level of folks that are steering this project, let's say, from their perspective. And then how does it trickle down? What does that chart look like?
Hmm.
And then how do you communicate through that? How do you make sure that the experience has the voice that it needs at their table? So start from the top. How does it trickle down?
That's true. And that project that works. Trickling down works, unlike trickle down economics. But that part works. But I think it's important when we're talking about funding economics, right? Also understanding who's holding the bag. I
Hmm.
think a lot of people miss that. It's like, well, this person's important. Are they actually paying for this contract? Is it aligned to their funding base? Like, you do have to understand that, because you do have to understand ultimately who is funding this endeavor. So I think that that's important, and I think it's a great point that you brought up, understanding who those stakeholders are, because a lot of times I think a perfect jump out point is really getting to understand how much they respect design, how much they understand design, and how much they understand your practice, because that's really going to change how you tailor, how you talk to them, what kind of presentation you're going to give to them. And I think all ultimately kind of lines up to like understanding the design maturity of your stakeholders. So like your design maturity, and you can go to NN Group, Nista Norman Group, and they'll give you a great video breakdown of all that with the different levels of design maturity. There's probably other ones as well too, but just go check those out. But it just basically lets you know, as an organization, as a company, as a person, how much they understand and respect the craft of design. Because if they have very low, very design maturity, there's going to be ways that you're not going to want to talk to them. They're not going to care about your personas. They're not going to give a damn about that. They're not going to. You can't talk to them in that way. You have to talk to them in a language that makes the most sense for them. I know you're like, well, I'm a designer. They should respect it. No, they don't. They don't actually have to respect what you do. It's unfortunate, but that's the reality. So you have to make sure that you're communicating in a way that they're going to get that. And I find that honestly, for me, I don't start talking design at all. I don't know about you. And actually, you've shown me that too. Actually, it's like when I talk about design artifacts, design pieces and parts, I make sure they're embedded, and I make sure that I communicate in a way that I'm not using a bunch of design jargon, because ultimately that's for us as a practice. But my stakeholders may not care. They may not care about
Hmm.
my user persona, my journey maps, or things like that, but they will care about the impact, the return on
Yeah.
investment, things like that. And it's
Yeah.
just being smart enough to understand how to communicate with them.
Yeah. I think one of the best things I learned in the past with the previous company that we were at was one of the leadership really had us learn how to tell stories. And I've taken that to heart, and I look at it as what is the story? How do I need to tell the story to whomever the audience is? So understanding the design maturity of, the stakeholders, my team members, we have to understand how do we craft those stories in a way that it's getting to them. It's getting those heartstrings if it's for
Hmm.
business bottom line dollars or understanding what problems we're solving for people, but understanding that design maturity where we're at. Like you're saying, we can speak in a certain way to have design happen, um, but not gloss over. And I think sometimes when people see two little letters of UX, they get all flustered and have
Or they
assumptions
look
of
at it like
what's
a line item on a
happening.
contract. They're like,
Yes,
what?
yes.
Can
So
we?
I
How much is
yeah.
that? Can we move that? Yeah,
Yeah, so it's kind of having that understanding. How do we tell the right stories to the right people in the right way? Understanding that.
precisely, precisely, and making sure that you know, that you're doing it in a way that is allowing you to be true to your practice, but at the same time, it's going to give you the best benefit. I think a lot of times people, again, I don't know if it's pride, I don't know if it's just inexperience, but they'll go really hard on the design jargon, but it's like, it's just as bad as going really hard on like development jargon and going too
Yeah.
technical when it doesn't. All it does is it puts your audience, if you're not talking the right language to them, it just doesn't make them feel good. Like, it doesn't make them feel like they're collaborating with you. It feels like you're talking down to them, and that's not where you want to be. You want to get the most collaboration as possible. Um,
Yeah, yeah. And it's, I think sometimes too, we try to come up with these perfect processes and I have to go through this step to do this, to do that. But you got to understand what's the maturity of this organization. Where are we? What resources do we realistically have? So it's more of what strategies and tactics make sense right now. We don't have to be married to a process, married to special terms. It's
mhm.
it's always understanding where are we at in that level and what can we do.
Exactly, exactly, and I mean that is something that I think you just learn over experience and just going over different projects. You're like, you really understand, what am I supposed to be doing here? Um, because at the end of the day, like you're trying to be the advocate for the user, trying to speak from their lens. You're trying to understand that, but you're applying these UX principles and these practices to your project team, to your stakeholders. So you're not only trying to define and solve the problems for the people that are going to eventually use the product, but you were trying to define and solve the problems for your business and the stakeholders. And what that really is, it's like, I think people forget, it's like, as a UX designer, you should be using those user-centered design practices on your project teams. It sounds weird, right? It's like, but you need to understand what their goals are, what their drivers are, like what the development team, what are their constraints, what platform are they building on, what can't they do, what can they do. You need to understand how much money this team might have to or time to put towards this endeavor. These are all the things that you need to take take note of and help solve for it. Because if you could solve these internal project problems or things like that,
Mhm.
it's going to make your external project product even better.
Yeah, and
Understand what their goals are.
yeah, and I think kind of the beautiful thing, I know enterprise product design, many people are like, it can be not the coolest, but I think the beautiful thing is there's so many problems to solve. There's never a lack of problems to be solved. So that part to me is always like, we'll get those problems. We'll solve them.
Hmm.
Like you're saying, sometimes the areas we get stuck or things take longer than they should is because we're not optimizing our teams and understanding how our teams work together, like from development to product to engineering. Like that is where a lot of big things can happen. And so how do we take those teams and build trust, build relationships with one another so when we get all these problems we know we have to solve, we're efficient, right? We trust each other. We understand the
Exactly.
technology and the tools we have at hand, the resources, the skill sets. That's such a huge part to enterprise product design doing it well.
Exactly. And honestly, like for me at least, that's the part that's the most. I don't know. I want to say the most rewarding, but like if you get that project team, especially when you come into a project, right? And and we've both seen this. We're consultants, and it's already sideways. It's in a bad spot, and that's usually when we get called upon, when we're summoned. Um, it's in a bad spot. Morale's low. People are mad. They're like, oh, here comes these guys. They're coming. They're wasting our money. If you could come in and understand how to solve a team's problems and do that while you're solving, like it's gold. Those people are going to
Mhm.
remember you. They're going to remember how your project went. They're going to also, it's going to make the project more fun. And we've seen that. We've done something recently together, and it was they had laid low. It wasn't, people weren't doing good. But bringing a new, understanding that we truly do want to listen to you, and I want to solve your problems, and I'm on your side. I'm not battling against you. Applying user-centered design to the people on the project, like.
Mhm.
This person, you literally have time to get feedback from them all the time. You should be applying those practices. You should be writing out the notes. Little things, important things like, Tim has to get off on Tuesdays early because he likes to pick his kid up from daycare early because that's the time he has to. Those important little pieces and parts make a good project. Not just we're building these things, and it's the people in it, it's the
Mhm.
user. So think about that. That's really important. And then understanding the climate of the whole situation. Because a lot of times, even with the project run, like understanding how the product owners, product teams, UX team, design team, engineering play together and how they collaborate, it's going to be very important for how you're dealing with your artifacts, for one, where they go and all the logistics around that. And for two, like understanding if there are rifts and handoff issues between them, those are the lack of better terms, those are low hanging fruit because those can be solved out the gate and they're going to have immense returns because they're things that happen over and over and over again.
Yeah, and I think the best processes I've seen with experience in this world is as a designer, not being scared to be a little technical. And I'm talking front end, understanding how the front end's built. If there is a design system, if understanding, we don't have to know every little detail, but just having a level of understanding so you can communicate. I like that analogy. It's like as a designer, right, or if I'm like a chef and I'm making a cake, like, I wanna understand my ingredients, right? Like,
I
I wanna
think
know a little
that's a
bit what
perfect
happens with
analogy. That
eggs,
No, that
what
makes sense.
happens yeah, like, when the eggs and the flour and the water and the sugar and the bu like, what happens? So on the front end, just having an understanding of your medium, what we are building with, because Figma flat stuff, we've all been there. It never perfectly translates, and that is okay. Like having that ability to not be scared to learn from engineering technical, but I also mean from architecture, like digging in, understanding how data models, what objects and fields and
Why this data
relationships.
can't go here? Why
Yeah.
this data has to live here?
And
What
it's like,
federation? Those are all
yeah, we don't have to be super technical, but just enough so our designs are informed enough. And then on the product side too, like having an understanding where products coming from, because they're the ones that, from my experience, they are the ones speaking from the business, right? And we need to have that understanding too. So it's kind of being able to collaborate with all of those. And I think getting it all together. So we're not siloed off. We're all kind of together in this. So that buzzword, empathy, right?
yeah,
We are
exactly.
all building that together, and not one of us has a weight of like the project on us. So product doesn't feel like, oh, I'm carrying this, or engineering or UX. Like we all are sharing that. I think is so important. And the best projects I've been on is it's just like a little machine. We're all kind of working together. We understand what we're
Exactly.
working towards.
And that only you're only gonna get that when you truly collaborate. Like,
Yeah.
and what I mean that is like to your point, like you really have to care about what's going on. Like you have to understand more than just your design realm to make a great project because then as you're designing, you can take the feedback and the pieces and parts that you talk to about your dev team. You'll know their constraints. Like, you know what, this platform
Yeah.
can't do this. I'm not gonna, and you can call those out, and they're gonna love it. They're gonna love it. Like, hey, after talking with you, Malik, and the dev team, I noticed that you said that all of this stuff is coming from API. So they're going to need to do API call, and we're not going to actually be able to hold this in a database. So knowing that I did these design things that would solve that problem and takes that
Mhm.
consideration, they love it. They're going to be like, yeah, damn it, yeah, someone's listening to me. I
Yeah.
try to tell the
Yeah.
last people that, and they love it. They eat it up. Or you listening to product, you know, I know, and this is something I see you do all the time. You do your crawl, walk, run. Like you'll make sure that you hit the thing that you hit the goal, you hit the requirement, and the design is nice. It's on point, but you always like to go delightful. I see that. And you're like, okay. However, this is in scope. Listen to me, product. Calm down, product. This is in scope, but this next part right here, I already designed it for you, and I already know the specs. I know it can align. I just know we don't have quite enough time. But phase two, we're ready. They love it. put it in the backlog, and but they love the fact that it's done and that you respect their process and what they needed to do by keeping things on track and keeping the project together. So
Yeah.
that's important. That's very important, and I think you can't really get there until you talk to them to start using your user UX design practices and methodologies on your team. And an important part of that really is understanding what the skill sets are. I think out of the gate, I every developer is not the same developer. Every product owner, project manager, they're not the same. A lot of times titles don't align at all. Like, they'll say, "Hey, I'm a product designer," and they think that all I do is push pretty pixels.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, like okay.
Or
I think I'm basically a graphic designer, which is not bad,
yeah,
but like they're missing the value to add, and because their scope is.
yeah. And yeah, I think that's another, again, one of the biggest things to understand before any work is done. What are those skill sets we have right now as a team? And the beauty of that, and if you create these teams that are truly collaborative, you learn from another and we can up each other's skills. Meaning, like, I know as a designer, like, you look at a job description and they're like, you do research, you do designs, you do requirement gap. Like, your list of stuff is huge. Some designers are comfortable doing research, right? Boots on the ground, going and talking to people. Some aren't, and that is okay. I'm going to say it. That is okay. But if you are comfortable with research, that is something very teachable. Like, it is, I've worked with product owners that you show them something and they're like, oh, I can do that. And they run with it. Or you invite engineers on the calls and they can start to see what you do and they gain that empathy, let's say, from users. But those skill sets, and like I'm saying, as a designer before, if I can relate to my front end developer, I'm gonna learn those skills, right? And I can become
Mhm.
smarter and more creative with my solutions. So assessing those skill sets, what you have now, but then how can we upskill each other too is a really great thing to think about as well.
I think, yeah, especially as we're more seasoned and get further in our careers, that's something I look to do. You look to find mentees, people you can mentor, that you can kind of take it to that next level because you always find them. I find since I like to focus, I'm more of a technical designer because I really do like the UI development part
Hmm.
of the process, and that's just something I geek out on. And I find that I get I find a lot of UI developers that want to understand better UX practices, heuristics, best practices that they can
Hmm.
apply, and that applies directly to them. And then I can learn, maybe the newest, because there's always a new library, and the front end is always a new crap, always forever.
Hmm.
And I might learn a new thing. Go, oh, Tailwind's doing that now, and it's just a good collaboration. So it's like assessing those teams. Not only it's not just like looking at the pros and cons, the efficiencies and inefficiencies, just also looking like where do people want to go? What are their dreams? What are their goals? You might meet a backend developer that's what they're doing right now, but the real dream is like to do more front end stuff, and that may be something you can help them out with. You might meet a product owner or maybe a project manager who really wants to be a product owner, and you can kind of help them out because there's a lot of skills, a lot of things that we do for requirements gathering that's very similar, and dealing with the client and things like that nature. So there's definitely a lot of that, and it just get also it's a good way to get to know people, right?
Hmm.
What do you like to do? What's this important? Like, it could be something as simple as like, hey, you know what? Man, I'm a new dad. I am just really tired, so I just want simple user stories, and then but having empathy to know as a project team, we all have ebbs and flows. Let's do that. Let's
Yeah.
give new dad guy the simpler user stories because we know he's gonna be tired as hell with that newborn, and and we can do the more complicated things, the complicated UI things. So and we'll just tap him in so he can get his sleep, and it makes a better project. He's gonna remember
Yeah.
that forever. He's gonna remember those people forever, and
Yeah.
those relationships forever.
Yeah, yep, exactly. Again, empathy.
Empathy.
We're just we're humans, right? We're
I
humans
I agree. I
making
think.
things for humans. And I think that gets lost in enterprise world, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And which is so wild because we're building things that people use a lot, you know, and it gets overlooked quite often. So, but yeah, skill
And I
sets
think,
are so important.
and that kind of leads us kind of to the last kind of big point. Like when you're creating your design artifacts, it could be personas, using anything, right? Those are your first products, you know, and the users, consumers of the products are are the people in your project teams, right? And they all have different goals and motives for projects and beyond the project. And that's what really this relationship building is all about from a design perspective. Pushing pixels, the UI part, such a small part of the giant UX world.
Yeah.
But the UX world, all of the things we're talking about, the relationship building, that's all part of it. Understanding your users, your teammates, building empathy, getting empathy for them, understanding, their goals, their pain points, getting insights from them as you're working with them. Like, oh, you notice that he uses this kind of browser, or he tests just. These are all things that you can practice over and over again on your project teams. And guess what? It's only going to make the project better by you taking those insights, being actionable on those, and making people's lives better on your project teams, especially long-term project teams.
Hmm.
There's no way that you're gonna look down for doing any of that stuff. People are gonna
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah. And nowadays, with like, when we're thinking of the artifacts, traditionally still it's something out of a design program, and I think right now Figma is like top dog, right? And there is no excuse not to craft that as a really usable, wonderful resource from
Hmm.
product to design to development. And it's one of it can be your best friend if you think outside of the box of it just being like a pixel delivery machine, but use it to tell the story and help people work together, take their feedback, learn from it. Yeah, that's a huge area to use a great tool for your team to work together and make it fun and
And
not
I agree.
frustrating
I agree.
using.
I've also found too that like meeting people where they are, um, it's helpful. I mean, I know there's Figma and there's all kinds of design programs. There's all kinds of stuff, right? But I think it's important too as you're rolling on projects, as the UX designer, as the person in charge of the user experience. Think about the user experience as someone working a project.
Yeah,
Meet your team members where they are. If your dev team's all up in Jira and Confluence, you need to make your all your stuff accessible there. You should be in there too. There's no reason that I don't like Jira. I don't care. Like if they're
yeah.
using Jira tickers to do their work, your designs
Yeah,
need to be there and easy to find. And if they're not, then that's on you. You have to make it easy to
yeah,
find, easy to get to, easy to access.
yeah,
Yes, there's Fig Jam and there's like you could do boards in there, but if everyone on the 100-person product team is using like Lucid Chart, guess what? You should probably use Lucid Chart. You're probably
mhm,
use the tools that they're using on it, just because at the end of the day, that's gonna get the best level of collaboration. And that's ultimately what you want: the least resistance, the most collaboration, so you can do your job easier. They can do their job easier. You're making it
yeah,
more fun and more accessible. It's meeting people where they are. It's always a
yeah.
pro tip. Don't force anything on them if it's not necessary.
Yeah, and I think as a designer too, like if you think of the art world, I think one of the most powerful things to think about when you're creating your artifacts too, it don't don't be scared. Like if I made a ceramic pot and and someone came over and just smashed it on the floor, I need to be okay with that, right?
Mhm.
Letting go is a very powerful tool because as your engineering teams start to really dig in, because we can only flesh out so much technical stuff, right? So the design, we can take it so far, but when we're in tandem with those build teams and we're refining things, it's going to change. And so our artifacts should not be these historical, like, but 3 months ago we said this. It needs to be a living, breathing, dynamic artifact that works with our teams. I think that's
Exactly.
very important to think about too.
The more you learn, the more you validate with the users. Like it's gonna change, and it should change. And I do think you're right. I do meet a lot of designers that they think they've got the perfect. This is the perfect design. It's never the perfect design.
Yeah.
And always can be better. And always can be different depending on context and the user. So that's important to know. But at the end of the day, it is about not pushing the pixels. It is about not focusing on the visual design. It is about building relationships. If you could build relationships with the users, especially your project teams, those are your first users. Those are your first people, your coworkers. Those are your first personas. Those are it. If you could do that, I guarantee you're gonna have fun in your projects, and you're gonna like double up on your user experience practice. You really are.
Yeah.
You start getting on site. You can start using this on your partners, on your kids. I use it on my kids all the time. All the time. A/B testing. Like what you want to do, like all the time. And it's these practices can be used in everything because UX design, you can those principles can be applied to so much. So I challenge you all. We challenge you all to think about that and to really apply those principles on your project teams and not just just not just fall into I'm just going to push pixels into UI person. That's as a keeper of the user experience, you're so much more than that.
Yes. It'll make your job better, I promise.
I
A lot
it
better.
seems tough at first, but it always makes it more fun.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank y'all for spending time with us. Let us know. If there are any other topics in the world of enterprise product design or UX design that you want to hear about, some real tales, some real experience based information you might want to know about, and we'll keep pushing these out regularly just to kind of explain how it is really out there in the real world and things that you can do to make your life as a UX designer and your enterprise product designer better.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Have a good one.
Thanks.
Bye.